They asked for $18,000. Again, I said no. But what happened next? The family turned on me, and I did the unthinkable. You won't believe how it all unraveled. I should have known the moment I said no. That was the beginning of the end of my marriage, my family, and what I thought I knew about loyalty. When my husband's brother, Ryan, came to me asking for money, again, I said no. After all, I had learned the hard way that he was the type of person who always had a big idea that would turn his life around, and each time he promised to pay me back, it was nothing more than a string of excuses when the time came. But this time was different. I had made up my mind. No more. No more bailing him out of his failures. I should have seen the storm brewing. But I wasn't prepared for what came next. Ryan showed up at our house, practically begging. I just need $18,000, just for a few months. It'll be quick, I swear, he said. I calmly told him no. Again, my husband, Brian, wasn't around. I was alone in this decision, but I felt it was the right one. I couldn't keep enabling Ryan's reckless decisions. The money was tight enough between our own bills, repairs, and some planned savings. But to my surprise, Ryan didn't argue. He nodded, thanked me, and left. 3 days later, I got the call from Brian. The family was having a meeting about Ryan's financial trouble, and of course, they assumed I'd be the one to save him. I thought this was just a simple family discussion at first. But when I walked into Brian's parents' house, I was met with something that made my stomach drop. There, sitting around a table, were not just Brian and his parents. Every sibling, every spouse, everyone except for Ryan, was there. I felt uneasy immediately. Something was wrong. Their smiles were too wide, too forced. Brian's father, a man whose opinion was always presented as gospel, spoke first. "We've been talking," he said, his voice filled with unearned authority. "And we've all decided that we need to help Ryan out. He's really struggling, and we know you've been doing well lately." I sat in silence. Was this really happening? I looked at Brian for some support. Something. Anything. But there was nothing. He just looked at me, tired, like he had given up on standing by me in this moment. "You know," Brian's father continued, "we've decided that, as a family, we should handle this democratically." I blinked. Democratically? I repeated, my voice betraying a growing tension. "Yes," Brian's mother said, her voice full of fake sympathy. "Majority rules, right?" She smiled like she was doing me a favor, as if I had a say in this. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to react. They went on, explaining how everyone else thought I should lend Ryan the money, and that it was the right thing to do, because family apparently meant I didn't get a say in what was my own. The room was silent, waiting for my agreement, but there was no way I was going to bend. So I smiled back and said, "All right, let's vote on something else." A few people blinked, unsure what I meant, but I slid a piece of paper across the table and said calmly, "Here, let's vote on whether Brian and I should stay married. I have a vote, right?" The room went still. Brian's face drained of color. His mother's expression morphed from an innocent smile to one of complete disbelief. I could see Brian's father's knuckles tighten on the table. "What's this?" Brian's father demanded. I didn't flinch. "It's a copy of the quitclaim deed for the house Brian and I live in. It's all in my name. All of it. And here." I slid another paper across. "This is a notarized amendment to our prenup I had drawn up last month. Since you all like votes so much, I thought I'd be clear about my assets." The silence that followed could have suffocated me. I stared at Brian as he processed the reality of what was unfolding. He didn't speak. Neither did anyone else. And that was just the beginning. The moment Ryan walked in, casually late as usual, and saw the chaos, everything broke. He, of course, had no idea what was happening. To him, this was just another day in his reckless life, where his charm had been enough to get him through life's challenges, until now. "Sorry I'm late," he said with that same grin, completely oblivious to the storm I had just unleashed. The family was in chaos, scrambling to piece together their plan. I wasn't done yet, though. It was time to show them what happens when they think they can just vote me into submission. The room had shifted. Brian, his face now pale and drawn, was still staring at the papers I had laid out. Ryan, confused as to why his usually smooth demeanor wasn't cutting it anymore, stood there, looking from one face to another like he was watching a sudden storm roll in. I didn't give him time to process. My resolve had hardened like concrete. I'm tired of being the only one who has to take responsibility here, I said, my voice steady, even though I could feel the tension rising like an electric current in the air. I've spent my entire life putting up with other people's messes, cleaning up after them. I'm done doing that. Brian opened his mouth to protest, but his father cut him off with a glare. Brian's mother, however, finally spoke up. This isn't fair. We're just trying to help Ryan. We know he's made mistakes, but this is about family. I held up my hand, silencing her. I didn't say I was refusing to help him. I said, leaning forward, I'm refusing to be bullied into it by all of you. There was a brief pause, and then Ryan finally spoke, the self-assured mask slipping off his face. What is this? Why is this turning into a battle? He looked between me and the rest of the family, his voice turning defensive. I don't need you to fight over me. I can figure it out. Then why don't you? I snapped. My patience was running thin. You know how to ask for help, but you don't know how to fix anything on your own. His expression faltered for a moment, his eyes shifting toward Brian, then back to me. I just thought, he started, but his words trailed off. I don't need you to think for me, Ryan, I said coldly. I've been doing just fine without you. The thing is, I know you'll always come back with some new plan, some new scheme. I've had enough of it. The conversation was spiraling. There was no longer any pretense of civility in the room. Every word felt like a battle, and my family was circling the wagons around the one person who had drained me for years. My heart pounded in my chest, but there was a strange sense of freedom in the chaos. For the first time, I wasn't asking for permission to be me. I was done seeking their approval. Brian was visibly uncomfortable. His eyes flickered from me to his parents, unsure of how to proceed. He was caught in the middle, and I couldn't help but feel a flicker of guilt for putting him there. But this wasn't about him anymore. It was about me. It was about finally breaking free of the chains they had wrapped around me. I'm tired of being second place, I said, my voice barely above a whisper, but it was loud enough to land like a strike. I'm tired of living my life for everyone else. I'm done being the family's emergency fund. And I'm definitely done being the one they can manipulate when they need something. You can all figure out without me. The silence that followed was deafening. It felt like the room had shrunk, like the weight of everything I'd said had just crushed the air out of the space. Brian's mother finally broke the silence, her voice shaky. What do you mean by that? She asked, her voice trembling. I said firmly, I mean that I'm done being the one to bail you out every time things go wrong. I've been the responsible one for so long, always covering for Ryan, always covering for Brian, always pretending everything's fine. But I can't do that anymore. I took a deep breath. I'm not asking for approval. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm done with this family's dependency on me. And with that, I stood up, walked to the door, and left. There was no dramatic exit. I didn't slam the door behind me. I didn't need to. The truth was, I had already left them behind long before that moment. It was the first time in my life I had walked away and not looked back. The moment I stepped outside, the weight lifted. I could breathe. I felt lighter than I had in years. And even though I was shaking, even though my hands were clammy, I felt the freedom. I wasn't beholden to anyone anymore. No one could hold me down. The life I had been holding on to for so long was finally gone. The heavy cloak of obligation that I had worn for years had been stripped away, and I was standing there, alone, but finally free. My phone buzzed in my pocket, but I didn't look. I didn't care. They could all leave their messages. I had my own path to follow now, and I was done letting anyone else dictate it. The days that followed were quieter. I spent time with people who brought positivity into my life, those who didn't ask anything from me, but instead gave me the space to just exist. I started embracing the idea that maybe, just maybe, life could be simple again. No more emotional manipulation, no more obligations that left me drained. I was learning how to live for myself and how to say no without guilt. It was a new concept for me, but a liberating one. Lily and I continue to see each other, taking spontaneous trips, capturing photos of landscapes, laughing over meals, talking about things both important and trivial. The more I got to know her, the more I realized how much I had needed someone like her, someone who didn't try to fix me, but simply let me be. I had never understood what it meant to be fully seen by another person, without the weight of expectation. But with Lily, I felt like I could breathe without fear of disappointing her, without worrying about whether I was enough. One weekend, we went on a hiking trip up a mountain I had always wanted to climb. The hike was challenging, but the moment we reached the summit, the view of the sprawling landscape before us felt like a metaphor for my life. I had climbed my own mountain, one that had been full of obstacles and unexpected turns. But I had reached the top, and it wasn't just a view I was admiring. It was the fact that I had done it on my own. I had taken control of my life, and now I was standing at the peak, ready to embrace whatever came next. We spent the night camping under the stars, talking late into the evening about everything that had happened in our lives, the things we had learned, the mistakes we had made. As I lay there, looking up at the sky, I realized something important. I wasn't waiting for something to happen anymore. I wasn't waiting for some grand revelation. I was living in the moment. I was living for me. When I returned home, things felt different, not in a dramatic way, but in a subtle, almost imperceptible shift. I felt lighter, more sure of myself. I wasn't afraid to make mistakes anymore. I wasn't afraid of what the future held. I had taken back my power, and with it, my sense of self. I knew there were still challenges ahead. There were still moments when doubt crept in, but now I knew I was ready. Ready to face whatever came next without hesitation. Ready to embrace life on my own terms. And as I walked through the streets of the city, my heart no longer weighed down by past mistakes, by family obligations, or by the fear of disappointing anyone. I realized that I had found what I had been searching for all along: peace. For the first time in my life, I was no longer trying to prove myself to anyone. I was finally enough. As time moved forward, I found myself navigating the strange freedom that had come with a break from my past. For the first time, I didn't feel the weight of others' expectations hanging over me, pulling me in every direction. I started saying no more often, not just to my family, but to the things that didn't serve me, the things that had once made me feel small or inadequate. My life was becoming mine again, piece by piece. Lily and I continued to grow closer. Every time we spent time together, I found more of myself in her presence. She never tried to fix me, never tried to make me someone I wasn't. She accepted me as I was, flaws and all, and that was something I hadn't experienced before. Slowly, the doubts I had carried about myself began to fade. I was starting to realize that I didn't need anyone else's validation to feel complete. Then one evening, about 3 months after my conversation with Brian, I got a text from my mom. I hadn't heard from her much since that day. My family hadn't reached out much either, and for once, I felt relieved by the silence. But when I saw her name on my screen, my heart skipped a beat. I knew it wouldn't be easy to ignore. I stared at the text for a long time. It was short, but the words hit me like a punch to the gut. "We miss you. Can we talk?" My heart twisted in my chest, but I didn't respond immediately. Part of me wanted to say no, wanted to keep the distance between us. But the other part, still that person who had been programmed to forgive and forget, felt the pull. It was the same tug I had always felt when it came to family. I spent the next few hours thinking about it. I didn't need their approval, but I also knew that if I didn't reply, it would haunt me. If I didn't give them some kind of closure, they'd keep calling, keep pushing. The cycle would never end. I decided I was done being a passive participant in that cycle. The next morning, I called my mom back. Her voice cracked when she picked up. "Eric, I've been thinking a lot about what you said. I understand why you walked away. I really do, but we miss you. Your father and I, we just don't know how to fix things." I let her talk. I let her say everything she needed to. She went on and on about how much she regretted everything. She didn't blame me for leaving, but she wanted to fix it. I could hear her voice cracking with emotion, and for a brief second, I almost gave in. I almost let myself believe that I had made a mistake, that this was the right thing to do. But then I remembered what it felt like before, the constant manipulation, the guilt trips, the weight of their expectations. You don't get to fix this, Mom, I said quietly. You can't just turn it around because you want to. You don't get to ask me to come back after all this time. I've spent my whole life trying to make everyone happy, and I'm done with that. I'm finally living for myself, and I'm not going back. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I could hear her breathing, trying to collect herself. I understand, she said finally, her voice barely audible. But we miss you, Eric. We really do. I paused for a moment before I spoke. I miss you too, but I can't do this anymore. I'm sorry, but I'm done. The call ended shortly after that. I didn't feel any relief. I didn't feel victorious. I felt empty, but it wasn't the same emptiness as before. It wasn't the emptiness of regret or guilt. It was the kind of emptiness that came with taking control of my life, of drawing a line in the sand. It was a space for me to breathe. I didn't look back. The road ahead was still unclear, but for the first time in years, I felt like I was heading in the right direction. And this time, it wasn't about finding validation from anyone. It wasn't about pleasing anyone. It was just about me, finally giving myself the freedom to be who I truly was. The days following the call with my mom were quiet. I didn't hear from anyone in the family again. The silence wasn't suffocating anymore. It felt like peace, and I embraced it. I took long walks, spent evenings alone in my apartment, cooking meals for myself that were satisfying, not just filling a void. I filled my days with things I loved, things I had forgotten about for too long. Photography, writing, even just sitting in a park, watching the seasons change without a care. It was mine to control now. Lily and I continued to build something beautiful. We weren't rushing, never pushing for anything more than what we had. It was effortless, like we were two people rediscovering the world together. We still traveled, still took photos, still laughed at dumb jokes we had both heard 1,000 times. But something was different. This time, I wasn't hiding behind any walls. I wasn't holding back, afraid to truly let someone in. And for the first time in my life, I realized something. Trust didn't have to be earned. It had to be given. And Lily, in her own way, had shown me that it was okay to trust again. It wasn't perfect. I wasn't perfect. And I knew there would be bumps along the road, moments when doubt crept in, but that didn't scare me anymore. It didn't send me spiraling into self-doubt or guilt. I had learned to deal with the mess, to clean it up myself instead of expecting others to do it for me. A few months later, Lily and I found a place together. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours. The moment we signed the lease, I felt something inside me solidify. It wasn't about the space or the furniture. It was about the fact that I was choosing this life. It was mine to shape, mine to mold, mine to live. And then, one evening, I got a letter. It was from my parents. I wasn't expecting it, but when I saw the return address on the envelope, something inside me stirred. I hadn't heard from them in months, not since the call with my mom. Part of me didn't want to open it. Part of me wanted to leave it on the table and forget about it. But the other part, the part that was still trying to reconcile the past, needed to know. I tore the envelope open. The letter inside was handwritten, not typed. My mom's scrawl filled the page. It was short, just a few lines, but the words cut deeper than I expected. We miss you. We're sorry for the way things ended. We never wanted to hurt you. You've always been loved. Always. Please let us know if you're open to talking. I read the words twice, feeling the lump form in my throat. My mom had never said anything like that before. I had spent so many years waiting for them to acknowledge me, to acknowledge my pain. And now here it was. The words I wanted to hear, but that had come too late. I didn't know how to feel. The familiar pull to return, to fix things, was there, but it was different now. I wasn't the same person who had been desperate for their approval. I wasn't the same person who had been broken by their words, by their actions. I folded the letter, put it in my drawer, and closed it. I wasn't ready. I didn't know if I ever would be. But I knew one thing. I had done the work to get to this point. I had worked to heal, to move forward, and I wasn't going to let anything drag me back. Not now. Not ever. The road ahead was still uncertain, but it was mine to walk. And this time, I wasn't afraid of what I would find, because I had already found myself.